force in all of us that science knows nothing about. It's fear.
Welcome everyone to Induced Fear. I'm your host Oscar, and with me I have Kev LeStarge, an author. He has a book called Billy Finds Bigfoot, and then you were just telling me about another one as well that you had just self-published, right?
Is it real or not?
Is it real or not? And I like to ask everybody, first and foremost, thank you for coming on the show.
No, thank you for having me.
I like to ask everybody, what was their origin story on stepping into this world of the strange, paranormal?
If you want to take it just as the strange, typically I get asked about, like, how did you get into Bigfoot? And I'm sure you'll get there, but the strange, it kind of bit me at a early age because I don't know what it was, but I loved horror movies as a kid. So much so where, you know, my parents would be very frustrated with me when it would be time for bed and I just couldn't sleep. I would kind of wake up screaming, do that whole thing as kids do for like kind of no reason, but also I saw some stuff like horror movie wise. I was like, that kind of freaked me out. And now it's dark and now here we are, right?
Yeah.
But like, it was also the books that I also saw. So growing up, we had Blockbuster, right? And so like you would go down the aisle and you would see these horror movies and it would just like, it was kind of amazing, but terrifying and like safe. And like, you knew which aisle was the horror aisle of the Blockbuster. So it's like, oh, that aisle is the spooky one. But then also in like even our school library, there was books, and this was elementary school. There was books on poltergeists, and like I think that was a very unique word for like a third grader to know, right? And the classic ghost stories book where it had all those kind of like charcoal sketches or pencil sketches of like ghosts and weird things.
Yeah,
that to me was like that's what I think kind of initially opened the door for other things that came around from a Bigfoot standpoint. So how about yourself? Is that kind of things that tripped you?
Yeah. I had my godfather. He was big into horror movies.
Yep.
As you can tell, I like that kind of thing with the Martian standing behind me. So he would have us watching that from like A Nightmare on Elm Street to then telling us ghost stories as we drove around town.
Right.
So that's what pulled me in. And then also those scary stories to tell in the dark books.
Oh, that just reminded me too. Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah.
That was like, I remember many of winter nights it getting dark by like 2:30 up here in, Wisconsin, and like coming home after school and everything's dark and watching that and just kind of like, okay, my folks can come home now. I'm ready to.
It's now real.
Yeah,
now
exactly.
I'm scared.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I think that kind of opens you up to the strange side of things. But I think what's interesting, especially with the Bigfoot topic, is that a lot of the media and things that you see, especially nowadays I think with like, say, like Expedition Bigfoot, they are very much kind of more you could tell that there's like that horror flavor that they're trying to add, in post, right? And the same thing I think with a couple of other, Bigfoot documentaries that are kind of out there as well. And like you see a lot from like, say, Small Town Monsters, where literally all of their AI generated designs of their documentaries or, the things that Alex Petikoff kind of puts out there always has this like very aggressive Sasquatch or demonized type of Sasquatch. And I think it's kind of interesting that's kind of the tone I think that people have with it. And especially even, there are, and we'll get into this and I don't mean to over-rotate on this, but like there are even some examples and stories of scary instances of a Sasquatch, encounters, having rocks thrown, getting bluff charged, whatever it might be, possibly getting put over a shoulder. which is one that it kind of takes me back to like early 1900s. But all of those things kind of, you know, I think that's maybe like 10%, I would say, of all of the experiences that people have. Typically, what you have is exactly what you see in, say, the Patterson-Gimlin footage of 1967 is just the Sasquatch walking, looking at you, and just walking away. They want nothing to do with us, and yet here we are trying to bug them in the woods and like have that glimpse of these creatures. But sorry, I digress.
No, that's perfectly fine. That's what the whole podcasting thing's about, is just talking about it and kind of giving those ideas, those what you feel in those in that
Yeah,
kind of
no, I appreciate
realm.
it. It's just don't want to be too long-winded.
No. But yeah, there is those, like, they do place that kind of horror aspect over these creatures, especially when it comes down to now there's more movies coming out and things of them there's a movie called Exist, I believe, and it's like a found footage kind of style, maybe. I can't remember exactly, but it's like a terrifying encounter with Bigfoot.
Yeah. A lot of them, I think, well, I mean, not even. If you look at the early ones in the 70s, such as like The Legend of Boggy Creek, I think that was the first footage out there, documentary style movie of a Sasquatch. And that's where, you know, this thing was breaking through windows and terrorizing. And like, that was the first glimpse that I think America mostly had of a Sasquatch. And like, it was the shock feature of this beast in the woods. You can't go out to any woods in any part of the country and any cabin, otherwise you're going to get attacked by a Bigfoot. Like, I think that's kind of what they were trying to insinuate, but like, no, come on. But it was still good.
That's what sells.
Classic movie. Yeah, it sells.
Yeah, yep. It's like with anything. It's like they'll put in this like quick cut. Even when it came down to Finding Bigfoot, there are those quick cuts of like, what is that? What's going on? What's that in the woods? And then it cuts to, and then it's nothing in the end. It's just to keep you hooked and keep you
For sure,
of being afraid.
The amount of times that show says, but I gotta say, like you're asked to, I mean, that show really also rekindled a lot of the flame that I had for the topic growing up. And like, you know, I always got to call out Harry and Henderson's, right? Like that was kind of the more, mostly, I mean, he got mad in that movie, right? And the teenage daughter yelled at him for eating the corsage. But like, that was probably like the only scary bit, right? That happened in that movie. Outside of maybe like grabbing LaFleur, like the hunter character. But anyway, I would say like, yeah, there's always kind of that twisting of the dial of like, how can we capture the audience and keep it going? And like the show did a really good job of doing it for 9 seasons. So kudos to them. You know, and I've had very open and candid and great conversations with Cliff Barrickman, as you know, I've gone into the woods with him a couple times. And if you haven't, please go to his museum. It's literally everything that you really do need to know about a Sasquatch. That's up in Boring, Oregon. North American Bigfoot Center is what it is. So, but yeah, I mean, nowadays I think it's just, you know, I really do try to understand where film creators or movie creators these days are trying to go with what they're kind of, you know, they're selling it, right? Because that's the more content you have on YouTube, the more you earn a buck, right? But if you're putting the topic in such a light and more of the woo side or the spooky side, like there's an audience for that. But I think that there's a massive amount of people who are concerned that what they're then doing from a scientific or even from a Dr. Meldrum standpoint is to really bring in some academia to it.
Yeah.
And to
takes away the exploration.
Like
to explore.
Let's, you know, tribes in Africa also had the same thing when they were seeing gorillas, right? Until they found out that it's a gorilla. And going to kind of leave you alone as long as you leave it alone type of situation. So anyway, yeah, it's interesting how there's now that side of it. But, you know, when you're in the woods, and if you've never been in the woods looking for Sasquatch, by all means, you can look out depending upon which part of the area of the country you're in, you could look out your back window. If you have a trash can, you know, next to your garage or something, they could be digging in it depending upon where you are in the country, right? You don't have to go deep in the woods or, not a single other human within 500 miles, wherever it is, somewhere Alaska, right? And Canada. You can kind of just take a ride even and perhaps come across one. So I think that there's trying to kind of delineate what are you in it for? Are you in it for the more the woo side, the spooky side, the scientific side? Let's understand these creatures. But I think myself, I'm more of that academia side, trying to lean on that academia side, the scientific side. But you can't help when you're in the forest and you have an experience, your little, as we kind of say in the field, like your lizard brain starts kind of moving and it's like, gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
And that's a hard feeling to change your thought on that.
Yeah, no, I would imagine so. I mean, I do that whenever I do any type of ghost hunt or anything like that. It's the same. Your brain is telling you, like, something's weird here. I want to leave and not feel uncomfortable. So you kind of have to fight for that sense of discovery.
Yep.
So what led you into choosing the big guy, into choosing these creatures?
Well, I think they chose me. I would say that, again, here in the Hendersons, I mean, film and media that books, reading that as a kid, but I think it was truly the idea of being able to actually get out there and have an experience. Again, this was coming from finding Bigfoot, where, back in 95, when internet was first coming out, the BFRO, the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, was really one of the first websites I went to, and just trying to understand what exactly is this thing. Like, are people seeing this? And I think that that's what, granted, finding Bigfoot was not around during 95, but I think that having that interest in it and creating a binder for myself and printing all the sheets and maps that I could. I remember that as a young teenager, putting all of that stuff in a binder and just kind of hoping that one day I could go on an expedition. But then,
you did that as a teenager.
Did that as a very young teenager. I wouldn't even think I was a teenager at the time. I was probably close to like 10-ish, like young adolescent kid. But it was one of those things where it just fascinated me. But I got to tell you too, though, like that's where, you're going back to your question, it also freaked me out. And I think I was trying to explore, like, why is this freaking me out? What is it about Sasquatch that really does kind of like freak our brains out? And really, I think you can take that back to, Cain and Abel, or, back to all of those kind of biblical stories of monsters and things like that. And then the medieval ages, and like the Europeans talking about dogmen or werewolves, right? Or lichens and things like that. So that's where I think we've always I think our human tendency is to really love it, but also be terrified of it. And I think that is a truly interesting like dichotomy that humans have.
Yeah, especially when it's like they were afraid of those things during those times.
Yeah.
But they still created stories.
Yes.
Along with those
exactly.
Things.
Like,
yeah.
And but to that point, that's no different than like the indigenous people of, really any country or continent rather, sharing those stories and saying that there's the woman of the woods, say in like the Pacific Northwest, right, of those cultures and those tribes, saying that you can't go out after, sundown because the woman of the woods is going to take you. Now, as terrifying as that is, back that up with potential actual children going missing or people going missing or hearing something. And as soon as someone says, oh, that's that thing I was telling you about, that's why you should get home and be safe. Like, that's a great tool to make sure that your kids stay in line, so to speak.
Yeah, keep the kids in line.
I wish we could have that today, to be like, oh, there's the boogeyman is actually under your bed. So if you don't go to bed.
Fact check says no, there's not that.
That's right. Well played. Yeah, exactly. Claude just said there isn't, so.
Yeah, that's the difference when it comes to, I guess, even things during like when we were younger opposed to now, it's very much fed to them so much. Like, it's right at their fingertips at every scroll. And then on top of that, there's the AI creations of just strictly videos that I still can't believe that people fall for. But
we can talk about that, because I'm like, but it is getting, this is actually, so I kind of call it like this double-edged sword. Like, yes, it hurts, because any proof that anyone has now that's recorded with today's technology, whether it's a phone or anything else like that, you now have a 99% chance that everybody who you show it to is going to say, yes, it's probably fake.
Yeah.
Unless you got some really gullible folks there, right? There's some of those in the Bigfoot community who will just kind of believe everything. But I would also say that, I think the only way we're almost going to have, or anybody is going to have that experience and be able to document it, number one, you got to get out there in the woods or the forest, right? Like, you have to take it upon yourself to have your own experience. You now cannot rely anymore on these things. Like, that's it. The only other option is which is kind of amazing if you think about it, but like full circle to where Roger and Patterson, their footage, which I know there's a huge controversy going on about that footage. I am on the fence of, they caught a real live subject, but and we can talk about that if you like, but if there, so is to capture and to actually have a reel to reel, some type of like 60 millimeter camera, and like, you have to have actual film, and like, that's the only way that no one you're going to be actually able to say, yes, there is an object that you caught, it's now on the film. And then it becomes okay, well, how far away from you were you to this creature? Are the limbs proportional? All of those things. And I always kind of give this one person a shout out. I've never spoken or talked to him or anything like that, but like, most of his content is very good, which is Thinker Thunker on YouTube, which I don't think that the proportions is something that he might have made, although I think he leans on that, but he does call it out quite well, to that there are proportions that humans just cannot fake unless it's CGI. So it's A or B, which is great, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, even with this controversy that's happening now with the Patterson Gimlin, like, footage, it's created a flip of the coin. People are like, well, it's fake. It's all fake now. What are we going to believe? The only piece of evidence that everybody, but on the flip side, there are people who are saying, okay, if this is actually fake, if this has all been a hoax, then it's up to us to go and find the truth.
Well, so where do you lean?
Oh, I lean that they actually caught something, that is something.
Yeah.
There. I mean, all the breakdowns of the way the creature moves, the way the muscles kind of shake as it steps. Even when people have tried to come out and say, no, we created the costume for it, here are all of our costumes. I'm like, buddy, those costumes don't look anything close to what was on camera.
Yeah. I mean, I also really give Bill Munns a lot of credit, and it's interesting. Granted, he was in kind of the costume design world, right? That's how he kind of got his start and all that. But his book, When Roger Met Patty, I think it's a thick book, but at the same time, it goes so in detail of everything that basically proves that no, this is a real creature. At the same time, he's been also on Sasquatch Odyssey. I think he was on that podcast with Brian literally a week after all of this buzz started happening about this documentary. Now, what I will call out, though, is that if you're on the fence, you have to kind of ask yourself, like, where were you initially? Like, because what I thought was really interesting is that, I posted about it on my Instagram account, which is the Bigfoot Archive. So all of the, I like collecting Bigfoot things, and I post on there about those items. But one of the things that I thought was very interesting was there were people who had Bigfoot profiles. Like, they are Bigfooters, Bigfoot believers, right? And how quick, I think, the sentiment for them changed. Like, that to me was like, did you see the film? It probably not, because otherwise you'd had to be at South by Southwest, because that's where they premiered it. So other than that, you're taking someone's word for it, and or someone who like secondhand saw this documentary. And from what I was understanding from, Bill Munns on this podcast was like, Jeffrey Meldrum was kind of quote unquote like, bum rushed, right? Where like he said he would do an interview, kind of went in, they angled all of these things. He then called Doug Hychek to basically understand, who is the producer of Monster Quest, to kind of make sure that like, oh, is this like, did this happen to you? Because this happened to me. And like, there was this kind of like, and it didn't sit well with him. Now, granted, I think at that stage, I don't know how his health was. So that also possibly could have played a factor. But one of the persons, and I don't even know who they are, but like one of their sentiment back to me, or the response was, Meldrum disagrees with you. Like he knows it's fake. Everything's fake. I'm like, ye have little faith. Like, come on. Like then to me, you're not like, you might not have ever been not just like a believer, but a knower, or you haven't had your experience out in the forest like I have, which says, to your point, Oscar, like it doesn't matter if it's fake or not. People have seen this on every continent. And like, then even if it is fake, let's just say, cool. Because guess what? That now leaves the door open to be the first to actually, there are plenty of videos of these creatures, but technically the first to have such a like monumental watershed moment of content that's changed the way people think of the forest, the way people think of evolution. All of these things. Think of the continents, during Pangea, and possibly this thing coming from Gigantopithecus, like all of these things, right? Like, cool, then it opens the door to that. But if it doesn't, then this is truly remarkable footage. And outside of maybe landing on the moon, if people are going to say that that's fake too, pretty amazing footage. Probably one of the most, like, there's a handful of those moments, but like, to me, this is the one it reaches out more to, where do we come from? I think at the heart of Bigfoot, to me, I have to like think about it. And to me, that's such a pillar for why I think this is so foundational for a lot of people, is because it asks that question.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's always these, when they talk about Neanderthals, or where is this kind of the quote unquote missing link.
Yeah.
Between, it's the fact that the creature resembles an animal, but the way it walks, and in some cases the way it acts and how intelligent it could be, leans itself towards like close to humans.
Yeah.
So you're in this middle ground of, it's a creature that's very close to us in some way, shape, or form.
Well,
there's something there.
It's the only other creature that can walk continuously at bipedal, that there's no other creature on the planet.
Yeah. No, I feel like that's what also happens with those other stories when it comes down to lichens, like a Dracula, things like, in the sense like the Gill Man.
Yeah.
It's always these types of creatures that are very close to human, but something is different, which is they're kind of a monster.
Yeah, and and to that, it's like, again, I think we're on this topic of like, well, then is it more fascination that draws you in, or is it more concern that pulls you out?
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting line that, I think for those who are more on that draws you in, you become a Bigfooter, and like you find yourself in the middle of the woods in the middle of the night, trying to call this potential max height of, say, 9.5 feet, 10 feet, right? I don't necessarily partake in like the 12, 15 taller than a giraffe size Sasquatches, but people have claimed that. So again, to each their own. But yeah, like, why would you want to call that in? Like, and there are times, Oscar, where like I will ask my own self as I'm out there and like, shoot, like this is close. Your lizard brain starts ticking, and it's like, yeah, my flight sense is really strong right now. Like, just got to get the
Brain's
hell
like,
out of
get
there.
out, get out, get out.
Yeah. Which I find is so funny with Bigfooters. It's like, there was a buddy that I had once who, they were in their car, they were hearing all the stomping around, like they could feel the vibrations. The car was kind of, teetering, and it got them so bad that they were like, they had to leave. And I'm like, you were probably so close. This thing was probably had eyes on you. And like, that's what they do. They do this. That they intimidate. Like, why didn't you just hang around? It's hard to fight that feeling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%. My brother, we're on two separate sides of the coin. He is like afraid of things that are human-esque, so humanoid type things. It freaks him out because it's like, this is human, but it's not at the same time. Yeah. For me, I look at it as, what is it? What actually is this thing?
Well, so you're the drawn in.
Yeah. He's like, I don't want any part of it.
He is like no, I'm good. I like the distance between the species. But I think this is, the other, perhaps, like, I always kind of dive in on this side of things, but like the romantic side of me with this topic is like, but how cool is that this creature, bipedal and all, granted they have hair all over their body. What number one thing that separates us from them is that, they don't, which kind of right away makes them not human because they have hair all over their body. We do too, but it's microscopic. I'm talking actual hair, right? If anyone's going to make that argument. But like, they actually have it all over their body. But then to be able to last out there, if they are so close to us, like, be able to understand how it is that they are living with no fire, being able to be in just the elements 24/7 for their entire life, that to me is like, I think that's also very appealing, to not be around all the technology of a society that's growing faster than we can even comprehend. Like, that to me is like, Dad, wouldn't you want to be a Sasquatch? Like, sometimes you kind of ask yourself, right?
Would they accept me if I just was like, I don't want to be a part of this world?
Wore a really long wig, could I pass?
Yeah, I think with the hair on our faces, we can pass a little bit.
That's right. Yeah. Grow it long enough and I'll just swoosh it over.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's where and I know that there's, this kind of, again, goes back towards the academia side of things, where it's like, let's learn from them. And like, let's understand what it is that they do. But I think you also get in a trick bag argument of, well, then you're not respecting them, you're disturbing them. I don't even know what to say to that myself. Like, I would say if they didn't want to be, clearly they don't, but there are times where they show themselves. Again, this is my understanding of certain experiences that I've heard from others, is they wanted to show themselves to me. They don't have to. They're that good. I think they pick and choose who it is that they want to show themselves to, and or are curious enough. Or maybe there is just that time where a car was driving by and like, it just was thinking about maybe the deer that it couldn't catch or whatever, and like was just lost in thought, and then there's a car that comes by, and now it showed itself, right? So all totally hypothetical, because until we can actually study these characters, I think you're just truly just left with hypotheticals and hypotheses and thoughts, and like, it's just really hard to kind of have an objective, I think, at the end of the day, of like where anyone takes this and how they take it seriously from that standpoint. But again, I'm surrounded in a office with like all of these Bigfoot memorabilia and things like that from Americana history type thing, and globally as well. But it's because it's just such a cool creature, character, and like, to your brother's sake, I would say explore a little bit more, like understand what perhaps, freaks you out about it, because I think that might be today's age of like, or still like that boogeyman effect. Like, I don't think that's all Sasquatch. No different than humans. We got our bad days. We got our grumpy days. We have our like, get out of here, walk away right now. Like, I am just frustrated at the world. Why wouldn't they be any different? Like, I can't imagine that they would be any different.
I mean, a dog itself gets frustrated at a point, So like, that is there. You have to think like, oh yeah, some days they're going to be like, get away from me.
I am an Australian, and I want to be on your podcast.
Yeah. So when you talk about experiences, and I think you have had your own as well, right? Because you've said you've been out there.
Yeah.
You're actually somebody who goes boots on the ground, as they say.
Yeah. So my first experience was in Los Alamos, New Mexico. This is where, crazy thing. It was technically the second night. First night, we still heard footsteps, which was amazing. And I couldn't quite believe that we were even hearing that. So I was chalking it up to, okay, someone's just kind of lost in the woods. I have to imagine that someone's lost in the woods, even though everyone was radioing and being accounted for. That being said, second night is actually where we, had an instance where we were a group of 5, 2 split off. It was just 3, myself, family member, and some other person who was there, walking in the shadows, kind of start, stop type of thing. Full moon, so quiet, you can hear your pulse beat in your ears. No flies, no bugs, nothing, right? Just still, but yet this pebble kind of trickled down this hill that we were right next to. No movement, but yet this pebble decided to unlodge itself from wherever it was resting and just trickle down, but then kind of walked a few more steps, 15 or so, 20 feet, whatever, and then we got this deep guttural growl. It was persistent. It shook your shirt off your chest, you could feel it. We immediately stopped our tracks. We back-stepped because didn't quite know what we were getting ourselves into. On the way back to try to meet up with this couple that we separated from, on the way to try to find them, I saw what I thought initially was someone turning their headlamp on, was actually this orange amberish ball glow, what again I thought was eye level, but in the daytime was realizing that it was actually again a hill, but this tree was eye level, and that's where this quote unquote orb was that I saw, that I think was an orb, just because it was, what else could it have been?
Yeah.
Not necessarily light refraction from anything, because it was dry. The leaves aren't wet. Nothing should be reflecting inside that tree that I'm aware of. So you had just a weird instance there, but I had to kind of compartmentalize that because that's not what I'm here for. That's a different mystery. So once we grouped up, told this kind of leader, because they were part of the BFRO, what had happened, we walked back. Turns out that where we thought this creature would have been, where we got growled at, was actually the opening of this massive, 100 or so yard meadow that kind of ran from the top of the mountainish area down, right? And we came to the tree line, and I think this is where, the guy was like, okay, now if we get bluff charged, just put your head down, don't look at it in the eyes. And your mind goes through so many things, and we all verbally committed. We're like, yep, sure, sounds good. Let's keep going. But okay, this exists. And then if it exists, I have to pretend like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
All those things. And so initially then we, he took out this wood knocker, knocked on it twice. Nothing happened. We went into the tree line just a little bit more, Oscar, and all of a sudden that's when we heard this snap pop of, later found out that it was a good 5-inch, 6-inch, diameter tree, which is not nothing. That got broken down, leaf litter, twigs, trees, limbs, all that cracking and snapping, hitting other trees. So that gets pushed down, and then you hear this massive rumble. And because the moon was so bright, which I think was actually lucky, so I like to go bigfooting when there's a full moon. Others don't. But you see all these shadows bouncing around in hauling tail, literally, out of this wood line, which turned out to be 30 unattended mountain cattle that stormed out of there, ran right down in stampede, right through the meadow where we were. And once everything kind of subsided, this is where you hear this kind of bipedal crunch, just slow walking. One of the guys was trying to get his, one of the guys was trying to get his thermal. He didn't really know how to work it, so it was there was that. We didn't have any audio because it was our first time, so we were super novice, didn't expect anything to happen, so why bring anything? It was just so many comedy of errors, and then to have this experience, so luckily enough I get to tell it quite a bit, so I remember a lot more than I think most people would, but I thought it's so amazing that you would have this creature who's just kind of hunkered down by this cattle, let's just say, and either it was there for warmth, there for security, right? There for a burger, who knows? That's a quick, easy meal. It's unattended. So what's a lost cattle, right? I think they might know that. But either way, that creature didn't spook the cattle. What spooked the cattle was the tree pop. We didn't even spook the cattle walking into the woods. The tree getting knocked down did. That's what did it. Or it was that, and then any other type of, whether whether people follow this or not or dig it or not, but like the infrared sound that they could produce, that was freaking the cattle out.
Yeah.
To get out of there, to make that distraction so that it could leave or the family could leave. Don't know. Don't even know if there was more than one. We were so distraught because the tree got knocked down.
Yeah.
Which I think there at least could have been two, because of the pebble rolling down the hill and then walking further. And again, if this pebble was on the right side, we kept walking and then we get this directional growl. So like that to me is two characters. Unless it was that quick that it looped around and flew, it could have, I don't know.
Yeah.
But, so that was like the first experience. And I mean, had another orb experience in Texas. That was like the size of I always say it's like the size of like the back of a early 1990s like Cadillac tail light. I mean, it was just long and pinkish reddish. But that's not in the middle of the woods. And then other things like Mount Hood, where again on my Instagram account, the Bigfoot Archive, we have put up there what I believe is a baby blowing raspberries or bubbles in a tree, and you can kind of see the audio of what I'm hearing goes kind of whoop, so
Yeah.
type of thing.
A very distinct sound.
Very distinct sound with lips. And I'm like, okay, monkeys have lips. Horses can also kind of blow raspberries, right? Like, what else could do that? Can bobcats do that? No, not really. Birds? No. Like, it starts to really narrow down what it would be, right? So that was kind of those two I've always kind of referenced as like my biggest, claim to fame Class B experiences. But I'm going to the Upper Peninsula later this year, so I'm finally back out there. It's been a bit of a hiatus because of my growing family. And then going to Canada, not necessarily for Sasquatch, but because you're in Canada, you can't not necessarily go Bigfooting, right? So like, I will be trying to go on some hikes there as well. So yeah, those are my two next boots on the ground expeditions that I'll be on. And I don't even know if you can call them expeditions. That might be really over exaggerating, but just camping with a purpose, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You call it an expedition.
Yeah.
In there for something.
I'm going to really inflate my ego and say expedition.
Yeah, I actually had a guest come on and he talked about having that infrasound kind of hit him in a moment, because he would go out there and explore. And that sound, the way you described it, kind of spooking the cattle in the area, that same kind of sound told him stop and turn around and leave.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he felt in his head.
And there was also an instance in Gifford Pinchot, Washington, where we were doing, and this was just like a single night where we're just again camping with a purpose. And we actually we were really trying to open ourselves up mentally we were just experimenting, just saying like, okay, let's just try to like mentally communicate, so to speak, with potential Sasquatch. And I think what ended up happening that night was like the family member I was with then had like a massive anxiety attack, middle of the night. I woke up, I thought I was almost like food poisoned. I didn't know if it was gonna like which end things were gonna come out of, but I felt like I just was gonna literally explode and just distraught. And remember like one of the other guys that we were with sleeping at one point, and then all of a sudden like then the next thing I know, like he's walking around and just kind of like looking for firewood, except we're not having a fire. Like we were all sleeping. Why do you need firewood? So like just weird discombobulated series of events that happened that night. And I almost wonder if like we didn't get a little bit zapped, so to speak. But again, relying on the academia, trying to like be logical about it. It's like, no, I probably did catch a little bit of food poisoning from the weird sandwich I ate that afternoon. Let's just be honest. Although like they were fine. So why did I get it? And then
you're trying to explain.
You're trying to explain it, right? Yeah. And like trying to like not overanalyze, but at the same time, also the easiest what's that? How does it go? Like, yeah, the easiest solution is probably the answer. So it's like, or we were just zapped and like, okay. And now we know what it is. And like, it was a Sasquatch. We all felt like crap.
Yeah, especially for everybody to kind of have these different reactions.
Yeah.
Of
And they
what
handled
they
it
were
differently.
hit with.
Yeah. Not one guy had the same reaction. One was wandering around, the other one was having an anxiety issue, and then the other one was having, physical illness. Like, that's not a typical night for anybody.
Yeah, no. That sounds like something weird happened.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah,
Or
because in my
just
head,
a
I'm
bad
thinking,
case of, Worcestershire horseradish, who knows?
yeah, because in my head, I'm just thinking, like, okay, well, everybody else, if you say everybody else was fine eating the sandwich, why would is he waking up in the middle of the night just saying, I need firewood, like right now? We need
And
firewood.
like, that's what my mind told me. And like, I asked him later, and he was just like, yeah, you guys are making so much noise. I'm like, so wait, were you sleeping? He's like, yeah, I was sleeping, and then I was cold, so I was looking for fire, but then I just got so tired, and I was like, okay, so you were like, okay. But how long were you doing this? Like, it seemed like you were just walking around for like an hour or two. Like, I was watching you, right? It just was weird. But good to know that at least it was him and not something else of like, oh, no, he was sleeping. I hallucinated it, right? Anything like that.
It wasn't him walking. It was.
That's right, yeah.
Sasquatch
Like,
walking around, yeah.
great. Now I have to worry about a freaking skinwalker.
Yeah, that would kick things up as you're seeing an orb, you're hearing other creatures in the wood, and now there's a skinwalker in the mix.
Yeah, and I was like, cool, okay. Meanwhile, I'm like, I really need a toilet bad.
Yeah. That's all I can focus on right
Be
now.
my luck. Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting that you had two experiences that involved some type of orb.
Yeah, it never really amounted to anything other than that. I mean, you saw it. I don't know if, one is related or caused by the other. Can't prove it. So,
Yeah. Because there are stories of people seeing orbs, even UFOs. They have these kind of overlapping kind of things that happen.
Yeah.
So that's always interesting to me. That's the one thing, the one experience that I've yet to have is these Sasquatch experiences. I've gone up to the Sasquatch outpost here in Colorado.
Yeah.
Really cool museum. They're life size. Well, I guess life size. Don't know the exact height of it, but they have a mother and a child.
Yep.
Sasquatch, very realistic looking, really cool. But they also offer expeditions. They have somebody that goes on expeditions.
Yeah, that seems to be
I've always wanted to do it.
I mean, it's really just I would imagine too, being a host of a podcast, there's so many people who are just doing it kind of not necessarily solo. I wouldn't go solo with someone, but that are just going out there, a couple people. I mean, I think it's not to knock it or anything, but like, yeah, you can do these larger camp things offered by the BFRO, let's say, or anything else, where like 30 people show up. I mean, that to me is, I don't even know 30 people.
Yeah, no.
And like, you're going to go here and it's not like these things, I don't know, like they know you're there. Unless they're sticking around because they're curious, which I think they are. That to me is the only reason to hunker down, like to hang around, and or you got your family's nest there, whatever it might be. But like, yeah, you can do it, like I said at the beginning too, like you can literally look out your window depending upon where you are and have that experience. And it's just who you know and where's the hot spots. I think the Bigfoot mapping project is pretty awesome. The Forest Fleur, Emily LaFleur has her own mapping AI bot database that she's worked on personally. So it's all of the experiences and things that she's gathered. So I think that's pretty awesome. Yeah, a little bit of ingenuity, a little bit of time, a little bit of money, and friends kind of crazy enough to go out there with you is really all you need.
Yeah, I got a photographer friend who is extremely tall. I might bring him with me. That way it's just like, hey, I got one of you with me.
That's right, yeah. Well, it's funny you say that because and this is one of the last things I'll say, but like the guy who one of the two people, the guy who's part of the BFRO, he was like 8. So like, not only were we 3 and then we get growled at and we left, and this creature's probably like, good, they got the point. And then we come back, and not only did we come back, but we came back with two guys, so now we're five, and one of them is 6'8". Like, I almost think that if that was like, oh, this is our alpha, like, now you two can have a conversation type of thing, because I think it pissed it off.
Yeah, well, maybe. Also, my buddy is a loud dude. He's a big, loud guy.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it would make it good or a negative kind of experience.
Probably good, because again, I think these things are curious, and
Yeah.
I was out there with Tom Powell a couple times, and he would want to go solo and set up a chair, or maybe even just sit on a stump, bring his guitar, and just sing songs, kind of like mountain songs. So in the distance, that's a little eerie, but yeah. Anyway, so like, be loud, be attractive, I guess is a way to say it. And you could probably have an experience for sure.
And was it these things that kind of led you to doing the children's book, Billy?
Yeah, it was just also something that I had on my mind for a long time. I know the sun's kind of dropping out, so I either might have to turn on a light or head out soon here, Oscar. But that's also where I wanted to take the boogeyman out of the topic. And I think that, number one, kids are going to, as they grow older, they're going to get all this stuff as they become an adult. They're going to get the scary side of things and the scary side of life. So that's where I'm trying to make it more available to them, and to get them to learn about it and not be scared about it, because frankly, the ones who are going to be able to study these creatures, hopefully one day, have to be prepared to be brave and to be aware that, these things exist, know that from the beginning, have an open mind, think outside the box. I think typically society doesn't want to acknowledge this creature. And then that's fine. But then think outside the box. I mean, this is where technology comes from. These are where great ideas come from, is allowing children to think outside the box. Why not do it with a fun-loving character like the one in Billy Finds Bigfoot? Now the other,
he genuinely loves to explore.
Yeah,
the story.
that's right. He loves the animals. He loves plants or rocks and all, the animals on the ground and in the sky, right? So that's also kind of showing like, hey, it's all appropriate for all of us to be a little bit more like Billy, studying things and drawing things. Like, work on your own craft. Don't just take a picture. I mean, yes, those are great. We're going to need that probably, but like, take the time to draw, like, learn a craft. Some, little nuggets like that. Appreciate nature, respect it. Little nuggets like that. And the one last one too there is, realize what you have in front of you, and don't take it for granted. I think it's a very hard lesson for adults to learn.
Yeah.
So trying to give the younger audience a little bit of a heads up on the rest of us on that front.
Well, if you would let everybody know where they can get it, where they can get the book themselves, and your other works, where they can find you, things like that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Here's a little plug. So yeah, Billy Finds Bigfoot is available on Amazon as well as Hanger One Publishing. But then I also have a middle school book, 8 to 12 and beyond, right? If you're still a Bigfoot lover, it works. So it's Is It Real or Not? That's also on Amazon, but also Barnes and Noble. And so, that Is It Real or Not is more the mystery and trying to answer the question, of course, is it real or not? I already know the answer. And again, just kind of lays it on the table for the reader to come up with their own questions, right, of the topic, and to try to find the answers. And there's many ways to do that. But then otherwise, the Bigfoot Archive, that's on Instagram. Again, post a bunch of different, more, again, global artifacts, Americana, media, pop culture items of Sasquatch. That's a lot of fun for me. You can buy some Bigfoot merch if you like Bigfoot t-shirts. Everyone has a cousin or an uncle or an aunt who wears all of their Bigfoot stuff. So that's for them. Some kids stuff as well. That's on Pine Shadow Design. That's on Etsy. Yeah, perhaps another book in the works. This is going to be more of a children's book, I think, approach, maybe even younger than Billy Finds Bigfoot. But yeah, be on the lookout for that.
Awesome. Well, Kev, I appreciate you coming on and chatting Bigfoot with me. I always love chatting about the big guy, these creatures. I will definitely be getting both my nephews a copy of your book. I always try to get them into ease them into those things. But I appreciate you coming on. Love the chat. Everybody go follow, subscribe to his works. Make sure you keep the wonder and exploration alive for yourselves. Don't just scroll. Don't just scroll through the phone.
That's right.
Constantly. To all those watching, listening, whatever you're doing, don't forget to ask questions and face your fears. Thanks for joining me and Kev LeStarge on this episode of Induced Fear.
Thanks, Oscar.